Yep, spring morning here in Kansas. Daylight savings time. And what better time to start this YouTube channel, I guess. We're going to mess with cars and different projects and just take you guys along for the ride. Welcome to the channel. We're going to take you guys along for what I do for a hobby. I used to build hot rods and street rods for a living. I don't do that anymore, but cars are in my blood. So I seem to work on some pretty interesting projects, some neat stuff, and I've had several people say, you ought to make a YouTube channel. So let's give it a shot, see where it goes. Let's just take you around the shop, show you a few things. These are all my projects, and not everything's even here right now, but we've got a lot of engine stuff going on, so I thought I'd take you guys for a little trip, kind of see what we're working on. All right. Just a 6-liter core, destined for something eventually. Not that interesting, pretty plain Jane. We'll start over here. 6.2 out of a Denali. Got this engine out. I drove it in here. It was an impound deal. And I've got an 88 Suburban that's really nice, lowered. Probably going to put it in that. Mild camshaft. Something like a sloppy stage 2 or something. And 4L65E. Gen 1 small block stuff. I was diehard on those. And there's still a lot of guys that are. What's that thing on top of the yellow bag? That's carburetor. Find somebody who knows how to even work on those anymore. A couple of those are for sale, but there is a 400 block in there I'm going to keep. If I build one more Gen 1 motor, it'll be a 400 inch of some sort. 2 and 4-wheel drive EDEs, miscellaneous LS parts, stuff destined for the parts washer to get cleaned up. Both these EDEs have got homes. One of them is going into this engine. This is the one we've nicknamed the Mystery Stroker motor. It's a real oddball, so take a look at it. That's a 6-liter. Any of you that are familiar with this, you know what the bore size is. Unknown crankshaft, but I do know it's a 4-inch stroke. With cylinder heads off, I measured how far the piston was in the hole from the deck, and it's 4 inches. So we know it's got a stroker crank in it. It's got a set of 6125 rods. The way I know that's actually laser engraved on the side, but there is no information on what brand any of this stuff is. It's got a pretty short skirt piston in it. It's hard to tell what they are because there's no, I'll flip it over and show you. There's nothing identifying what the pistons are. So it's a mystery. We're gonna put this thing together. We roll it over here. It cleaned up good. I drove this one to the house from about 25-30 miles away. Drove it around kind of hard, see how it ran. We knew it was a stroker motor. The owner didn't know what it was. Couldn't find the paperwork on it, and I did some labor for him, and this engine was the payment. So a little bit of a gamble as far as not knowing what you're getting, but also any kind of stroker motor is worth a decent amount of money. So especially just the parts, even if they're cheap parts, they're not cheap in the grand scheme of things. So here we go. Flat top piston. But if you notice anything, the bore size on this thing is huge. I measured it 3 times because I was not believing what I was seeing. So if you'll pay attention to the amount of material between the 2 cylinders, and we'll walk over here to this stock 6-liter, and you see the difference in the amount of material there. Stock 6-liter's got a 4-inch bore. The bore on this bad boy is 4140. I mean, it's got a gigantic bore. Talked to a few people, and they said there's no way, but we can measure it. Measured it a bunch. I've got pictures of it measured up. It is what it is. It's got a 41060 bore size head gasket on it, a Cometic. The engine had a set of CNC ported cathedral cylinder heads, and I know there's guys that are going to hate me because I'm not using them, but great big intake runners. CNC ported combustion chambers, CNC ported exhaust ports. There's a number on them. I looked them up. Here's the deal. I like these heads. I know these heads work because I drove this engine. But I don't see the point in running a cathedral port cylinder head with a stock intake manifold. And the port size on this is gigantic. It's huge. If you put a stock intake gasket on it, it overhangs the port by better than 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So what's the point? Well, yeah, buy a bigger intake, sure. I mean, that's ultimately what you do. But at that point, what's an aftermarket intake manifold going to cost me? So what I did was I had another set of square port heads, LS3 style, L92 cylinder heads, just like what's on that 6.2, just like what's on that 408 we'll talk about here later. So I had those overhauled. I've got a bead blast cabinet. I cleaned them up, bead blast them, took them to my machine shop. I'm into the heads for literally a set of 317s I traded for them. I've got an intake for them. So we're going to put a set of square ports on here. It's got valve clearance. It's got the right valve reliefs and the pistons for it. And I called a guy named Chris Straub of Straub Technologies and said, Chris, I want this engine to be a fairly low RPM engine. I don't want to turn it much more than 6,000 because we don't really know what it is. And I want it to last. I don't want to go out and just beat the snot out of it. And hopefully it'll last a long time. Even he was kind of confused about the bore size. He couldn't believe it, and I emailed him pictures. He still just couldn't fathom somebody bored one that big. Everybody says it's not safe, and it may not be. We're going to find out, but I'm going to do what I can not to just beat the snot out of it in the meantime. So we're going to go with something that'll make power, you know, up to about 6,000, make a lot of torque. I told him I wanted, you know, as close to 600 foot-pounds as we could get. The horsepower will just fall in place. It'll probably make north of 550 horse just because of the good cylinder heads and the cubic inch. But it's going in a 87 crew cab square body that I cut down, made a short bed, and half-ton swapped it. Two-wheel drive. That I would like to pull my little 80s era camper with and, you know, get out and drive it and have enough torque to move that truck because it's heavy. So I'll go through one of the ADEs. The heads are at the machine shop. Still need to order the camshaft. I'm going to put a proper windage tray on it. Whoever put this together spaced the stock windage tray with washers, and I don't know, that's just not the way I like to do stuff. So we're going to do that. Stock oil pan, you know, everything pretty well stock appearing. Like I said, stock intake manifold. And we're going to put this thing together, put it in that crew cab, and hopefully it'll be in there a long time. A lot of people are worried about the cooling. That thing's not going to cool. It's not going to run cool. Well, it ran fine in that Avalanche with a stock radiator and a mechanical fan. So, as I'm sure you've seen, as I swept across the shop, I've got two sets of factory electric fans. Yeah, they're too big for a square body radiator unless you have a 6.2 diesel radiator, which is what's in that truck because that's what it started life as. A 6.2 diesel radiator For a square body truck, those upper rubbers, they're in a slot. There's enough slot in those, they will literally bolt up on the top. And then you make a lower mount for them, and you can run a factory set of fans with the factory ECM controlling it. So, we're going to have a 6.2 copper brass 4-core diesel radiator, set of electric fans. We should have everything we need to keep this thing cool. It's going to be a little bit spicy on compression too with that big a bore, and I'll show you how far that piston, I think it's 0 decked without just measuring it. I know there's going to be all sorts of keyboard engine builders out there. They're going to tell me all sorts of stuff, but until I see their YouTube channel, I'm not real worried about what their information is. Alright, so that's that. 6.0 doesn't really have a home yet. It might go in my 05 Silverado half-ton crew cab, short bed, 2-wheel drive daily. It's got a 250,000 mile 5.3 in it that I pulled out of like a 99 Suburban through a set of 799s, and a 220R cam that another friend of mine had that was brand new, and it runs good. It runs real good, but it's a 5.3. It doesn't make any grunt down low. So maybe this 6-liter will get freshened up, and we'll swap it and maybe put the 243 799 heads on it, and maybe a little more camshaft. I'm not sure yet. We know where the 6.2 is going in my Suburban. Now, here's 408. She's covered up in the bag. This motor, interesting story. I wanted to build a stroker motor. This motor kind of landed in my lap. Not complaining, trust me. This motor, I wanted to build one, but man, I could not justify what it was going to cost me. Happened to be on Marketplace, and I usually don't get those deals. And ran across a guy over in Missouri that was selling a brand new Manley crank and a set of Molly, or Mall, however you pronounce it, flat top pistons. If you've ever looked the piston part numbers up, they're like 15 digits long, so it's hard to really decipher what you're getting. So I told the guy I want to buy the crankshaft, and he wanted like half of new for this crank. I thought it was too good to be true. So I tell him I'm going to come up right after work. Got off work at 3:30. It was a better than an hour drive over there, and got over there, and we got to talking, and actually had some mutual friends. One of the paint reps I met in my career working in body shops and hot rod shops, and this guy were really, really good friends. So we hit it off good, and he was a car guy. It's not what he did for a living, it's what he did for a hobby. He built like a car a year, or body and paint worked them for friends, and several been to World of Wheels. I mean, nice stuff. Guy did really nice work. And he was putting together a Stroker LS combination that he ended up changing and wanting to boost it, and wanted, better parts. Although that Manley crank's good to 1,000 horse, I think he wanted maybe a lightweight crank and maybe a billet crank. I don't remember what he ended up going with. He kept the connecting rods he had, but that crank was new in the box, and then he said, you really need to buy these pistons. And I said, okay, can you give me the time to look the part number up or whatever? So he hung out, and I looked the part number up, and they were correct for a set of LS3 style L92 heads. So I bought the rods, I bought the crank and pistons, and that started this little 408 LS motor. So I ended up buying a set of Manley rods from CNC Motorsports. I think I bought the fluid dampener from CNC Motorsports. Bought some stuff from Motion Race Works. and got this little motor rolling. A friend of mine down south of here did the machine work on it, and it's 11-to-1, and it's got a Straub Technologies camshaft in it. I had emailed and called Chris and told him what I was putting together, and he said, well, what's your horsepower goal? And I just told him what I wanted to make, and he said, I can get you there. So Chris ground me a camshaft, and I think this little engine is going to be pretty rowdy. This is actually a Gen 4. This is a Gen 4 block, but I'm going to control it with a Gen 3 ECM and harness. Partially because I've got like a half a dozen Gen 3 ECMs, and tuners claim that they're less of a headache. So use what I got. But this is gonna, well, we're running a stock intake on this. It's actually brand new. It was a Craigslist kind of deal too. A guy bought a L92 crate motor and basically kept the crank and block. No, he kept the block and the cylinder heads and parted the rest of this engine. And I bought that intake brand new, never run. I mean, he took it right off brand new. He has a set of connecting rods and pistons I was trying to buy for that 6-liter over there, and they ended up getting sold to a guy about 3 hours south here, near the Oklahoma border. And man, I was mad. I wanted them. Well, come to find out, that guy that bought them and the guy that sold them are both buddies with a kid I went to college with. And in the whole communication of hot rod guys, word got out that I was looking for them, and they come up on Marketplace for sale down near Oklahoma. And I told the kid to call me immediately, and he called, and I told him, I said, I'm the one to try to buy those the first time. You know, when you bought them, can we work a deal? And he said, absolutely, I'll hold them for you. And I drove down there and met his dad and scored these brand new, never run Gen 4 rods and pistons for a 6-liter, but with the 823 cylinder head. So these pistons and rods are going to go in this block, and this block might end up, if we don't put the 799 243 heads on it, I may just find another set of square ports and intake and just build a 6-liter, basically build an L92 engine out of this Gen 3 setup. It ought to run good. I mean, if you pay attention to Richard Holden or any of his videos, these Gen 4 6-liters with those heads and a sloppy stage 2 make 500 horse, 515 foot-pounds. It might be the opposite of that, but they make 500 and a flat torque curve. Be a great engine in a truck. I mean, it'd be a great engine in anything, but really be a great engine in a truck. So you'll learn. That's all I've got anyways. Trucks. There's 2 empty stalls here because 2 of my trucks are at a buddy's house, and the crew cab's down in the house garage. But follow these videos. They're not going to be out daily. I'd like to get them out weekly. We'll just see how much I get done during the week on things, because I work full time and we're still in snow season a little bit. So you know, there's days I got to work 12s, or I might have to work a weekend because I got to help keep the trucks rolling down the road so they can clear snow. So anyways, follow along. We'll cover more projects, and as summer hits, you know, we'll be going to car shows and doing stuff like that. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you here in a week or so.